If it's too late to worry and you're too blue to cry, then get ready for Dr. Laurie Roth. She's a Ph.D., black belt, host, singer, songwriter, mom, gun owner, survivor, and red-blooded American through and through. From 3,000 feet up in the mountains of Washington, it's the Annie Oakley of the airwaves. Ready or not, here she comes, Dr. Laurie Roth.
Welcome to my Unsolved Crime segment. Each and every week at this time, we visit with Susan Murphy Milano. She's an expert crime blogger. She has her own show. She's a best-selling author, and she has a new book coming out and other things in the works. And she's writing articles these days and solving crimes. She has a couple guests that are history-making, Chet Hosmer and Holly Hughes. She is called, according to Susan, the Annie Oakley of the airwaves in the courtroom, who kicks some booty and gets stuff done. And Chet is the brainchild behind the EAA and technology to really get the bad guys. And I'm not going to steal your thunder. Susan, I'm going to let you tell us more about Chet Hosmer and Holly Hughes.
It's not about thunder. I think it's about thunder for victims across the country. Yeah. As far as intimate partner violence and stalking, we now have an application that will be able to be a voice, either whether they are alive or something has happened to them. And it was kind of funny because Chet Hosmer he's the chief scientist and co-founder of WetStone. It's a division of Allen Corporation. He's over 30 years researching, developing high technology solutions that change the world, with the work that they do with the Department of Justice, the military, and since approximately 1992, he has focused in research in cybersecurity, and he served as the principal investigator on over 40 cybersecurity, digital forensic, and information assurance research programs. I mean, wow. It's just amazing as far as what he's done, and he's a cybersecurity keynote plenary panel expert. I mean, he goes across the globe, as does their company. And then we have Holly Hughes, who is no stranger to HLN and CNN. Yeah. She was a former DA with the District Attorney's Office in Atlanta, Georgia, where she prosecuted some of the most high-profile cases in America, including working on the murder case of Ray Lewis, superstar with the Baltimore Ravens. And she's very good at triple threat prosecuting homicides, hate crimes, high-profile felony cases. She's now in private practice. She's a defense attorney. And when I say that she's the Annie Oakley in the courtroom, it's because she's a powerhouse. She knows how to represent the clients. Besides everybody watching on the weekends or during the week, she's on Court TV, CNN, HLN, Primetime. She's all over the place. But most importantly, she is also part of this revolutionary breakthrough known as the Evidentiary Abuse Affidavit. And she had encouraged me to seek a technology resource to take the application that's in the information in the book already, Time's Up, and WetStone Technologies and Chet Hosmer met that call immediately. I mean, I had something in my hand within a week or two. So it's nice when a corporation steps up and doesn't say, wait a minute, hold on, because this affects, as you know, Laurie, people's lives. I mean, we've talked about this for the last year.
Oh, yeah.
The importance of when and if this happens. So WetStone Technology is stepping up and not saying, well, I don't know if I have the money. I don't know if I can do this. They actually did it.
Yeah.
And we launched this in Myrtle Beach at the Techno-Forensic Conference on October 31st. And so I think that Chet can explain a little bit more the importance of creating this and what the company is hopeful in doing
and explain for people who have heard about it, that have heard the Reader's Digest version, Chet, just what is it? We know that intimate partner homicide and people live in fear every day, and they need a tool and tools. How does this work when we get back on the other side?
I think that...
hold that thought.
Sure.
No, this is not American Idol. So keep your shirt on and keep your powder dry. Dr. Laurie Roth will be back in just mere moments. Her name is Dr. Laurie Roth, Here she is again, right now.
We're talking with courtroom attorney and say it like it is, lady. Holly Hughes is going to talk with us a little bit, but Chet Hosmer has developed, he is the head of WetStone Technologies, and he's developed a protocol, if you will, to actually do what Susan Murphy Milano was visualizing and giving people tools to speak out even from the grave in a courtroom to have evidentiary abuse affidavit. Chet, walk us through. People have heard that term from Susan several times. What is it? What is it that you've developed that people can use?
Well, I think it's one of the interesting things is that unusual that someone like Susan has come up with a process, like you said, a process or a protocol or a model that actually fits within cybersecurity and actually fits within forensics. That's what we do, right? And so by one of the marriages that we've made here and the technology that we're inventing and the protocol that Susan has developed is really the answer. So it's really a true partnership, and rarely in business do you actually or in life get a chance to do that. But what we've done is we've taken Susan's protocol and the definition of how you actually create an evidentiary abuse affidavit and actually put that technology in an iPhone. And in the future it'll be in other cell phone devices, so that now a person with only an iPhone or an iPad or one of those devices can actually sit down and fill out the affidavit, actually create their testimony right with that device by actually speaking in and taking a video of themselves speaking their affidavit, and then securing that information so that it would be prepared to go to court in the hopefully unlikely event that something
so you say securing. So if a person, let's say, a wife has an iPhone, okay, so she can record troubles that she's having or concerns with her, let's say her husband who's abusing her, and you say secure it. How does that happen? She types in something or she says something, and then what? It goes somewhere to be stored in case the jerkweed or the abuser comes and tries to steal it or expose it. It's recorded somewhere else.
That's correct. It's actually distributed in the Internet into the cloud, and it's there, but it's protected, so it's encrypted when it's out there, so no one can damage it or read it or any of those kinds of things until some event occurs, whether the person becomes missing, whether the person was the victim of a homicide, or some other event occurs, and then through our technology we can recover that and bring it to law enforcement and be able to prove that it is in exactly the same form.
Okay, Chet, can you speak up just a little bit? I'm having trouble hearing you for some reason. I want to make sure the audience heard you.
Sure.
Okay, so the difference would be, so before this technology, let's say a wife or a lover.
Why don't we take Stacey Peterson, because that's the best well-known case.
Yeah.
She goes missing. She tells everyone that something's going to happen to her. That's called hearsay.
Yeah.
And I think Holly, jump in here. Holly can best explain it. I think she can give the better version.
Well, basically, what would happen a lot of times, and unfortunately we know the statistics, we know that when people, male or female, are in abusive relationships, ultimately it's going to end in death if they don't get out, because people who have a problem with domestic violence aren't going to just stop midstream. They're not going to one day wake up and see the light and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't be battering my wife. Maybe I shouldn't be abusing my children. It doesn't happen like that unless there is serious intervention and the person wants to change. So unfortunately, the statistics are very high that if, and I'll just say woman for purposes of making the discussion easier, is in an abusive relationship, we know that it's likely to end very badly for her, and she may just be a victim of homicide at the end of all of this abuse. So what happened in court was her girlfriends used to be able to get up and take the stand and say, well, she told me he was going to kill her. She told me, he said, I will bury your body and no one will ever find it. She showed me the bruises. I saw them. I drove her to the ER. And that used to be allowed in a court of law. Unfortunately, few years back, the Supreme Court came down with an opinion called Crawford versus Washington, and it was a horrible opinion for criminal law. Now, it does have a good application in civil law, but basically it said, okay, we can't have that testimony anymore. You can't tell us what she said because she is not here to be cross-examined. We cannot put her on the stand. We don't know if those are truly her statements. And so when they issued this opinion, the United States Supreme Court, Anton Scalia issued the opinion, and he wrote and he basically said, you know, there's a problem with this because in our Constitution, the United States Constitution, it guarantees us that when we're hauled into a court of law, we have the right to confront our accusers, which we always see happen through cross-examination.
Sure.
You know, someone puts a witness on the stand, and then the other attorney gets up, and they test their credibility, and they push them, and they try and trip them up, and they see, you know, when I confront you, does the story stay the same? And that's all based on the Confrontation Clause in the United States Constitution. So when Anton Scalia issued this opinion, he said saying what the dead woman said is a problem because you can't cross-examine a dead person. We don't know if those are truly her words. Maybe her friends are just making it up after the fact.
Yeah.
So what Susan has done, and it's absolutely brilliant, is Susan has come up with a way to sort of get around that hearsay objection. Mm-hmm. And the way she's done it is she created this evidentiary abuse affidavit wherein a woman who was being abused would be able to go and make a videotape of herself. And she would answer the questions that are laid out very specifically in the affidavit. She would hold up pictures of herself with the abuse. You know, this is a picture of me with a black eye that I received on such and such a date at the hands of my husband. This is my name. This is my social security
number. So it really
number.
it walks them right through the questions and what would be acceptable in the court.
That's exactly right. And what it also does is it identifies the abuser because you hold up a picture of him on the tape.
Yeah.
So what you've done is you've gotten around one part of the problem, which is hearsay, because we no longer have to worry, are these her words? Because we've got her on tape, identifying herself fully. The affidavit is notarized, and so we know this is something she's done basically under oath. So we've gotten past the hearsay problem. Now, the other problem is the Confrontation Clause. You still cannot cross-examine a dead person. But if you read the Crawford opinion carefully, there's something in it called the Forfeiture Clause. And basically, it's that if somebody, a defendant who is on trial, they give up their right, they forfeit their right to complain about things if they're the reason for the problem. So if you have killed the person who would have testified against you, you can't then benefit from that. You know, we're not going to reward you for being a good criminal. So the fact that this woman is not here to testify about her abuse, what we're alleging is it's because you killed her. And so what we are trying to do is attempt to challenge the Crawford decision and carve out an exception in domestic violence homicides. So now that we have come up with this technical application, it's available to everyone because we know stalkers invade your life. So a woman might not feel comfortable downloading this application on her iPhone because her husband checks her phone. But now that it's out there, she can do it on a friend's phone and send it out there into cyberspace. She can do it, and as soon as there's a built-in mechanism with this genius technology that WetStone has come up with, that when a police report is filed, and her name comes up as a missing person or as a homicide victim, it automatically triggers someone to say, okay, now we need to release this information to the police. We need to give them the person to look at, a suspect to go after. The history has been recorded. And the next big step, what we're going to need, Dr. Laurie, is we're going to need a very brave prosecutor to get a judge to agree to allow these evidentiary abuse affidavits into trial. There's going to have to be a test case, and somebody's going to have to be brave enough as a judge to say, I think this does fall under the forfeiture exemption. It falls under the clause that says I'm not going to reward you for killing the witness. The only reason the witness isn't here is because you killed her. And so what we're going to have to do once this technology is up and running, and unfortunately, we all know that there will be a test case because we know there's going to be a woman killed. by her abuser after this affidavit is done. It's just a fact. It's sickening and it's sad, but it's a fact.
This is just out.
Yes.
Isn't one basic way to seek hearsay or to get around the hearsay is to seek admission, not the truth of the statement itself, but for another highly relevant purpose? I mean, I guess this is, to me, is a will. You know, a will is a legal instrument by which we all give our personal possessions and designate where we want our stuff to go. And
right,
so
but the definition of hearsay is an out-of-state statement that's repeated in court to prove the truth of the matter asserted. And your question is, what if we're not offering it for the truth of the matter asserted? What if we're offering it for another purpose? However, I don't think that that's going to hold much weight because, truthfully, the judge is going to see right through that and say, well, of course you want the jury to believe that he beat the crap out of her. That's why you're entering it, because you want the jury to believe that he is the killer, that ultimately this abuse escalated into a homicide, which I don't think that is going to be a prevailing argument to any judge. I don't think that we're going to be able to convince somebody on those grounds, but a very smart prosecutor can argue to a very smart judge about the Forfeiture Clause. Do not reward him for his own bad behavior. Don't reward him because he killed his victim. And I think that stands the very best chance of getting around and carving out an exception to hearsay.
Yeah.
Because there isn't the right of confrontation. Well, how do we get around that? We get around that by saying you don't get the benefit of killing someone so they can't testify against you.
But I think that also, too, that this becomes, across the country, if we can get this as accepted practice, it doesn't go up to the Supreme Court, and that for the first time, a technological company by the name of WetStone has given victims a voice. For the first time, what is so amazing about this is that Chet Hosmer has caught the offenders' actions up with the victims and used 21st century technology that they have developed to do this, because this is all they do as far as security and with what they do as far as the development of products that they do. So you're bringing a voice to victims not in the Stone Age, but in a technology age, because we have to be able across the country to deal with cases effectively, and we don't have the tools. So technology really is the weapon or the artillery for so many victims across the country, and I think that Chet would agree.
Yeah, no, I think that one of the things, too, based on what Holly said, that's really important is that whenever you bring evidence in from a digital form into the courtroom, it typically isn't the piece of evidence that either convicts or acquits, right? It tends to be a piece of evidence that can be used to corroborate other evidence that's from a physical nature, or use it for probable cause to go collect other evidence. And certainly from that perspective, this kind of testimony that is in the victim's own words is going to be able to be used to be able to collect other evidence, to be able to be used for probable cause, be able to be used to deny other statements that are being made or make other statements untrue, those kinds of things that will bring. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the linchpin that either acquits or convicts, but rather it is a piece of digital evidence that is very powerful in the courtroom when you bring this together, and we can attest to the fact that it has not been modified, that it is legitimate, and it happened at this moment in time on this phone in this location.
See, that's the part that I think is wonderful and so important is, and like you were saying, Holly, there needs to be a test case and brave judge and prosecutor to set it. But you know the abuser, if they're trying to kill a wife or ex-wife or lover or something, they might shred or they might take over the iPhone or the cell phone. But if it has already been recorded in a safe location where they cannot control the cell phone, see, that's the thing that thrills me is this automatically, if someone is killed or whatever, it comes back to haunt them. It is recorded, isn't it? The police people know about it.
Right.
They will find out about it. I want to hear more on the other side. We're talking with Holly Hughes and Chet Hosmer and Susan Murphy Milano.
No, this is not American Idol, so keep your shirt on and keep your powder dry. Dr. Laurie Roth will be back in just mere moments. name is Dr. Laurie Roth, and here she is again, right now.
We're talking with Holly Hughes, an amazing attorney who has been a district attorney. She handles very difficult cases, and we're talking about a history-making technology that Chet Hosmer and WetStone has created based on the brilliance of Susan Murphy Milano, also a survivor and crime blogger and best-selling author. Chet, tell the folks what is available at the Apple stores this Christmas.
Yep, on December 25th at the Apple Store, you'll be able to go and download the app on your iPhone or your iPad or your iPod Touch or a friend's iPhone, iPad Touch, etc., and download that app and start entering your evidence abuse affidavit that was the protocol defined by Susan Murphy Milano. And it's a great protocol. As Susan mentions, it's in her book, so you can actually read about it in her Time's Up book and start understanding that. But you'll be able to do this in the pure digital form starting on Christmas Day.
And it's stored in a safe place in case the abuser takes all of your instruments and phone.
That's correct. That's correct. It is not stored on the phone. Once you do it, it leaves the phone and is stored in the cloud. It'll be available to the people that care about you. Okay, and let's say a person is murdered. What happens at that point? It is told somewhere, it is reported somewhere, it is tracked somewhere. How does that work? Well, as Holly mentioned earlier, once that event, that horrible event would occur, then that affidavit would be then presented to law enforcement with all of the forensic evidence surrounding it. Like I said before, the information that's available in the iPhone is so cool because we can tell you exactly when that was recorded, where it was recorded, what iPhone it was recorded on, so we can basically prove with the information that we have from the phone and from our technology a lot of information about the affidavit and how it was created.
Wow.
We've had a lot of women, Jackie Waller's family, she went missing in Cape Girardeau, Missouri on June 1st, 2011. Had she done this, and she started to do something on her computer when they found it after they found her vehicle and her not in it. But she was going through a divorce. She went by herself to allegedly pick up her son, which didn't happen. He wasn't there. The last person to see him was her estranged husband, who was a former police officer as well. And she has not been seen or heard from since. He is in jail for other charges, and they're waiting to facilitate some things. But had she done this, there would have been an arrest. Had she done this based on a lot of information and evidence that's already been gathered, the case would have a different outcome, and we wouldn't be spending hundreds and hundreds upon thousands of dollars by law enforcement to do things when this was in place. Because in her words, she's telling you her fear. She's saying what's going on. She's saying, because in Jackie Waller's case, as we heard both Stan and Ruth Ralston tell us on the show a couple months ago, is that she said this was going to happen. In all of these cases, and so many of them, Holly, how many times do we hear when you're on the news, they said if something happens to me, or that the person, pattern of conduct, the person to whom was the last to see them is the one usually responsible for making them disappear.
Absolutely, and that's the sad part, because back in the day, we used to be able to have those friends take the stand and testify and say, she told me, if anything happens to me, look at him. She told me he was hitting her. She told me about the threats he made. And that's why this particular tool, this evidentiary abuse affidavit, that is why it is so brilliant and so necessary. It is absolute genius, because it is going to not only give women a way for their cases to be prosecuted in court, but what it's also going to do is empower them. We all know nobody likes to talk about domestic abuse. Nobody wants to admit that they are the victim of abuse. It's a shameful thing to them. And when you give them the power to sit down and make this recording via the application, or if they just do it with the book, the information they get out of the book, and have a friend videotape them, they are taking the very first step of fighting back. And the man doesn't even have to know it, but it is empowering to the woman to sit down and to say it out loud and to know, I have finally stood up for myself. And so hopefully what it will also do is have a multi-tiered effect. It will help us in future prosecutions, but what we're also hoping is that will enable and empower these women, and once they've taken that first step, maybe they will be brave enough to take the rest of the steps that are outlined in Susan's book and that you can find in the book, Time's Up, and you can find it on the website, and it gives you the steps to take to get yourself out of that relationship safely, because we all know the statistics. The statistics tell us the most dangerous time for a woman is when she decides to leave that abusive relationship. So we can better our prosecutions, we can empower these women, and hopefully, Dr. Laurie, the third thing we'll do is we will put offenders out there on notice when they start seeing this thing advertised and they start hearing that Apple has this application. It may just make somebody out there think twice. You know what? If one man in America knew that his woman might have downloaded this application, maybe it will stop him. And if we stop one, then we won a battle.
Well, see, I was just thinking that when you were talking, I was thinking, please, God, I could see psychologically how, now it wouldn't magically change the bad guys, but you know what? If they knew this technology was out there, they can't control that their wifey poo is recording this, and they can ruin her cell phone and everything else, but it's already out there, buddy.
And you saw it firsthand, Laurie. We had Clara Colon on the show a few months ago, and the last resort was for her to do the EAA. Yes, we did it through the book. She made some flash drives, but she was alive to tell you when no one thought, even a private investigation firm, thought she was going to be killed because her husband is a police officer, related to police officers in that department in New Jersey, and no one would assist her. We did this. We wound up having to write some blogs. We put her on your show. She's still alive. And there were 3 bullets with her name on it, one for herself, her little girl, and her teenage girl, because he was enraged. And once we put it out there, he, in my opinion, backed off. And he's still on the force only because at the time of the court hearing, to keep his job, what they did was they had lessened or reduced the charges. The police at the time of the incident that she suffered had responded to a domestic, but by the time the judge ordered, counseling and a sentencing or charges and a fine, it was reduced to something totally different. But again, you have to look at the original response, which was they responded to the domestic violence call. Nobody thought she was going to be alive. But in a few cases, what we do is I put them on your show, I put them on my show, I write blogs about them, and that's the only deterrent. It's been a good deterrent for the victims' offenders because they go, uh-oh. The world now knows, because my favorite thing is to say, and I know you're listening, and we just recorded this, so guess what, buddy? I mean, that's what stopped them. So can you imagine if then they don't know if she's done this across the country, what effect that's going to have? Yeah.
Well, it's fascinating because obviously the most dangerous time would be for a woman or a man. I mean, when they've announced that they're leaving, that period of time, and then the divorce battle.
Or the smell change. They smell something's not right. Perhaps if people that are listening, maybe she doesn't argue the same way anymore. Maybe because she's got a plan in place and she goes, well, I'm getting ready to leave, so I'm not going to have that same tone in fighting or combating him. I'm just going to go to bed and say goodnight. I'm done with you. He starts to notice that, or she, because this can happen to a man or a woman. They start to notice that, and by golly, then they think something's wrong, so they smell something different. What's also nice is what WetStone Technologies has done, again, brilliant, is that you're going to be able to know the offender, because a lot of times these people don't submit to information. What we also suggest, or in the guidelines or the instructions, are to bag and tag his razor, some hair, because they won't submit to a DNA. Well, she's got it. She's telling you where it's at. And so for law enforcement, which WetStone Technologies deals with a lot because a lot of their other products go towards law enforcement and military, for the offender, and I think, Chet, I think that was something that we didn't think about until you started evolving this technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely true. I mean, our role in this whole thing is to be a fair witness and be able to be able to witness these specific items that are there, collect this information like you have. Like I said, the protocol you have created in the Time's Up book is absolutely outstanding because it covers a much broader breadth of things than just the recording of the person. But it gives them a guidebook of how to actually do this, and then we can digitally capture that information as well in order to be able to advise the authorities, whoever they might be, where that information is, where that evidence is, so they can go get it. So as Holly said, it's not only the courtroom, but it's all of the aspects that you would do in the investigation in the case that we can basically capture and record and preserve forever, and hopefully it'll never be needed. But if it is, then it'll be able to be brought out and proven.
Yeah, and there's many steps that people need to be taking, obviously, as Time's Up and Susan's book walks through. They need to get out of that mess, but it's not just the time around the declaration, I'm going to divorce you or leave you. Susan, your mom had been divorced for some time when your dad came and killed her. And
4 or 5 months, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's not like, I mean, there's some people that are a loaded gun, and because you went against them, they think about it, they machinate on it. But if you follow what you say in Time's Up and do this technology, if your mom had that, do you think that, is there something she could have done to save her life in your view?
No. Because he was going, in this case, it was different. It was, she had, you know, she had done things.
Hold on.
Okay.
No, this is not American Idol, so keep your shirt on and keep your powder dry. Dr. Laurie Roth will be back in just mere moments. Her name is Dr. Laurie Roth, and here she is again, right now.
We're talking about getting people free and saving lives here, history-making protocol. Susan Murphy Milano has designed it. It is written about in Time's Up, her best-selling book, and Chet Hosmer of WetStone has created the technology to make it so. Holly, there's a challenge. There needs to be a court and a judge and a prosecutor use this first. And what are the legal steps and challenges about this?
Well, the challenge is that it's going to be considered hearsay because it's an out-of-state statement that's being repeated in court to prove the truth of the matter asserted, because we absolutely want the jury to believe this woman when she is on tape saying, he beat me, these are my bruises, these are pictures of the broken bones, you know, these are the x-rays, hold the x-rays up. So we want them to believe it, and the challenge is getting around the hearsay. And their friends can no longer come in and talk about, they told me this. So in order to play this tape, the defense is going to object and say, well, you know, you might be able to get around hearsay, but now we can't confront her, we can't cross-examine her, we can't challenge her. And so that is going to be the first step, is there's going to have to be a judge when the prosecutor makes the argument that under the Forfeiture Clause, which is written about extensively in the Crawford decision, which was the death knell for these prosecutions, that's what they're going to have to argue, and a judge is going to have to say, you know what, I agree. I think this fits under the exception of the Forfeiture Clause. I think that there's enough evidence that he killed the victim, so she wouldn't testify.
Hold on, Holly.
Back in just mere moments. Her name is Dr. Laurie Roth, and here she is again, right now.
We're talking with Chet Hosmer. He is head of WetStone and the technology of the Evidentiary Abuse Affidavit that Susan Murphy Milano has come up with, and Holly Hughes, a renowned attorney who's on all kinds of TV shows. You've perhaps seen her, and she's just come off of a large case, and so we're all just talking about this history-making technology that's available as of December 25th at the Apple computer stores. Is that right, Chet?
Yeah, at the Apple.
It is, but can I say something?
Yeah.
WetStone Technologies, if other corporations could take the lead, like they have, and I think that's what they're showing us, besides doing this amazing technology, is that they're showing the commitment to something bigger than them. It's because of, safety issues. It's because of people in their community, because this affects everyone. So it's my hope that while this is being released and issued, that other companies, Holly made a good point at the break, Coca-Cola, Verizon, come on board and get these for your employees. Have these apps available. Because, again, you see so many corporations out there who say, we can't help you unless you go through a foundation or you are not for profit. WetStone Technology did not say that to me. They said, Susan, what do you need? That's the difference. That's the attitude, because this is an epidemic. When 8 women a day are being murdered, when children are being murdered in their own homes by fathers, by prominent people. A couple of weeks ago in New York, you saw Mr. Freelander, a corporate criminal attorney, or a corporate defense attorney, murder his wife and then 12-gauge shotgun his 8 and 12-year-old children, and then he took his own life. I mean, we need corporations to really come on board. And let's use WetStone as an example of it's costing them it's costing them a lot, because they've really stopped what they were doing to do this. And look at the lives it's going to save. And I think that, Chet, you would agree. Look at the lives that the outcome this will have.
Yeah, no, I think that, Laurie, I think that one of the things that we haven't mentioned tonight, and I think it's important, is that there's an economic cost here that hopefully this technology will have an impact on. There's over 2.2 million medically treated injuries that are due to intimate partner violence, costing our country over $4 billion a year in just the injuries that take place. So these people didn't lose their lives, but they were injured. Yeah. So if this technology can curb the number of those that happen, we all benefit. Yeah. And I think Susan's point and Holly's points about bringing the corporations involved and getting them involved to help their employees is a win-win, and we all win because we all know what the cost of healthcare is in this nation today.
Well, we need to scream this from the rooftops. National TV shows need to know about this and get excited. We need to continue writing articles. Susan and I'll write another one and post it everywhere. The word needs to get out everywhere and as loudly as possible, because you're right. I mean, this is critical that lives need to be saved. Now, where can people get Time's Up, Susan? Can you give out your website, please?
They can go to Amazon.com, or they can go to SusanMurphyMilano.com, and they can get it in ebook form, or order it from Amazon, or order it as an ebook or a CD.
Wonderful. Well, you guys are revolutionary. Thank you, Chet Hosmer of WetStone Productions. What's your website, Chet?
It's just www.wetstonetech.com.
Whetstone Tech. And thank you, Holly Hughes. Thank you all for your fine work.
Thank you.
You know by now that God, country, and our moral heritage are not for sale, and our great country needs your fervent prayers. Talk to your friends. Talk to your enemies. Spread the word about the Roth Show. Check out Laurie's articles, archives, and great sponsors. Go to therothshow.com. Remember to pray for our country, and remember to be back next time, right here for the Roth Show with Dr. Laurie Roth.